I think at one point it was like a few thousand, and now there's literally maybe 50 people living there.
Videos of like skeletons I found, and it was like there were hundreds, so many ruins. Hey everyone, welcome back. How's it going?
It's going.
Very round.
Yes, it's very round these days.
In case you guys didn't know, we are expecting to have a baby in like 6 weeks.
Or so.
In case you guys missed it or couldn't tell.
It's kind of obvious now.
Anyway guys, we are checking out, what are we checking out today?
Today we are learning about why does England have 3,000 deserted medieval villages? Which I didn't realize it had that at all, but it makes sense because it's so ancient in history of a culture and country.
The real question is, why are they deserted?
Yes, that is the main reason. So we're going to check this video out and hopefully it'll explain.
Anyway guys, before we get into this, please like, share, turn that notification bell on, subscribe, because I messed up that order. And anyway guys, if you are liking this type of videos, please comment down below, and also comment down below future recommendations that you would like us to check out. We're really liking getting back into checking out a lot of the English culture and the English countryside, so that's what we're doing. Also comment down below if you were not aware of this and if you are learning along with us.
Yes.
So.
All across England and the UK are a series of abandoned medieval villages. In fact, it is estimated that there are over 3,000 deserted medieval villages in England alone. Many of these are documented, however there are a large number that have simply been forgotten, and records of their existence aren't recorded. But what makes a deserted medieval village? And why were these settlements and dwellings abandoned and left? Today we look at these, and specifically, the reasons for their abandonment. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. In a previous video we've looked at life inside medieval villages and the sort of life that the inhabitants lived. The people living in dwellings inside these villages would have had their lives dominated by the agriculture industry, and they would primarily be farmers. Much of the land around the hamlet would be owned by the lord of the manor, and people would rent and farm the land for the lord to turn over a profit for him. However, there became a period of time in which many of these villages and seemingly thriving settlements became abandoned. We're not saying these all happened over a short amount of time, but at some point during the Middle Ages, people decided to leave or were forced to leave these settlements and their way of life. It's considered that most of these deserted hamlets were left in the 15th century.
So I wonder if like he's showing all this like grass footage, like field footage. I wonder if that's why like at one time that used to be.
That's what it's saying. Gainsthorpe. Deserted medieval village. And I'm wondering, because it doesn't look like anything left, but you can see a bit of a border, like a hedge border. And then, like, the bumps, I guess, could have been the original foundations. So it's not really ruins of what I was thinking of, like, broken buildings and, you know, rubble. That's
what I was picturing when you said deserted. I thought they were, like, somewhat still intact.
Right.
Whereas, you know, because, like, England has so many ruins under the ground.
Yeah.
Because I was talking with one guy, and gosh, when I almost first saw the channel, and you know I worked in construction, he sent me some videos of like skeletons I found. And it was like, there were hundreds. So they
just underneath the building.
Yeah, they were trying to build a new building, and they started digging for the foundation, and they dug it up, and they had to like bring in, like archaeologists in and everything to like try to figure it out. Anyway, so with all these old buildings, like they weren't built to last hundreds and hundreds of years, being wood and grass.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that they're just, if you don't live and maintain them, they're going to.
But this particular village looks like it's completely cleared.
Let's look at the first reason why this happened. Firstly, it's rather boring. As time goes on and landscapes naturally change, the geography and topology of the land also changes. Natural causes can have serious implications for people living in certain areas. Let's take an extreme example such as a tornado. These drive people out of their homes, but in medieval England, these obviously weren't likely to force a group of medieval peasants out of their settlement, but major storms were something that could. One example is a village called Dunwich in Suffolk, which records today 183 people living there, but during the Anglo-Saxon period, it was a major international port, and was in fact the capital of East Anglia.
Oh, wow.
During the 13th and 14th centuries, major storms battered the area, and in 1347, 400 homes were swept into the sea, being the victims of a huge amount of coastal erosion.
Oh my goodness.
Damn.
Rivers changed their course too over time, and this can be a huge reason why peasants would have left their village. If you don't have a water source, then you can't simply live there. So if a river has changed course as it naturally does, then you might have to relocate.
Yeah, I always find that interesting how rivers literally can change where they flow. But it's also interesting because it's like almost taken for granted. I feel like they're still used for a huge amount of like transporting goods.
Big ones, yeah.
But with modern technology, we don't have to live anywhere near a river.
No.
Or a lake or anything like that.
But back then, that was like the main reason to build a village.
That was everything. You wanted to be on the river. That was like your focal point. Like that was your trade. That was your defense. That was
that's how you survived. You needed water.
That was everything. So it's just weird the disconnect from like. It's not even that long ago, like 200 years ago, and I shouldn't say like they're not a huge deal. Like there's definitely still third world countries.
Yeah, still
the river's everything for them too. But it's just interesting, yeah, with the modern plumbing and stuff that you can be 300 miles away from any water source and water can be pumped to you. So it's a luxury for sure.
The second reason why 3,000 medieval deserted villages were left is possibly the most common reason debated and considered. The Black Death or the Great Pestilence or Plague swept across England in 1348 to 49, and it seemed to have entered the country through the port town of Weymouth.
Okay, so you can kind of see like an outline of like a rectangle there, where like a foundation for a home would be.
But kind of also is he saying if there's like a huge disease that wipes out a huge population,
there's no reason to stay there.
Well, you're going to probably, maybe, I don't know, maybe not right away, but you're eventually probably going to want to congregate with other people.
Right.
Into a bigger place.
So you have to find a different...
You just leave, you know...
You migrate away.
You migrate away from the once big village or whatever. But actually, one thing I will say, I kind of like, because, you know, every place has abandoned villages and cities.
Yeah.
One thing I find interesting, I mentioned, like, I used to live in an old village, but at one time, that village used to be a population of like 1,500 people because it was a coal mining town.
Oh, right, yeah.
So once the coal was done, it's like now 30 people. There's nothing there, and almost all the remains, you can go there and you wouldn't recognize almost anything. We used to live in an old bank, which was really cool, but almost all the infrastructure is just gone.
Oh, wow.
And that's only like less than 100 years.
Because people just keep leaving.
Yeah, I don't know.
They just get
bulldozed and burnt, and I don't know, but...
England in 1348 to 49, and it seemed to have entered the country through the port town of Weymouth. It travelled across the south in its bubonic form during the summer of 1348, before mutating into its pneumonic form in winter. By spring 1349, it was causing devastation across Wales and the Midlands, and by late summer, it had travelled across the Irish Sea and travelled north. This was also the case across Europe, and the plague ravaged the continent, leading to the deaths of an estimated 25 million people, which was estimated to be 40 to 50% of Europe's population.
Whoa, 40 to 50% of the whole Europe's population?
Yeah, because you gotta think population was so low back then.
Yeah.
We're in a whole different world. But yeah, nowadays, if you wanted something similar, I think it's at 800 million is Europe's population, so 400 million people.
Oh gosh. That's, yeah, just when you go by percentage, that's a huge significant
it's massive
change.
In England, it's estimated that it killed between 40 to 60% of the population. The Black Death didn't discriminate, and it affected everyone from the higher social classes to the lower social class peasants. Now, the Black Death was one of the reasons that these villages were deserted and abandoned, because while it could have easily wiped out the whole of the village, and it certainly did in some cases. Many villages across England had their complete populations killed by the illness, and this was a common thing. Fields which had been previously farmed by the village's population were left abandoned and overgrown, with the harvest being untended to, leading to a lack of food for the population. The implications and consequences of the Black Death meant that peasants were now in high demand by the lords of the manor in order to work their land. Trying to get a peasant workforce now became a competitive industry, as lords would try to tempt peasants away from their villages to go and work in new areas with the promise of more wages. So this could be another reason why settlements and villages were left deserted. It began with the Black Death, but those lucky enough to survive it could simply have been offered more money to move to a different area.
Interesting.
Moving freely could also have been a reason why these villages were deserted. Towns were becoming more common and becoming more populated during the latter medieval period, and could have been seen as more attractive than village life to those people living there. Towns had become trading hubs, and even some goods were being traded from Europe.
Well, that's interesting. Look, all of them are on like boats to cross the river.
No, I think that was like the original one of the. Was it London Bridge or
Oh, it might have been. Yeah,
I think it was the original London Bridge. Was like a city on a bridge, which was really cool. I haven't seen the picture with
where they're on the boats.
Snowshoe looking.
Yeah. So it looks a little different, but they could have had several of those kind of things. But it does say London.
It's really interesting seeing these old maps of London because, like, at the time it was probably, and it still is, but you know, at the time it was this huge, probably thriving city. And then now, if you took that same city and compared it to something we have nowadays, it would be like
Yeah.
Not that big.
I mean, London's still very big.
Oh no, London's definitely grown.
From Europe, which meant that certain towns became international trading hubs. Inside of the town, many people could make money by trading their wares, and this could even apply to peasants. Inside of the village, they were tied to working the land for the lord of the manor, and wouldn't make any money at all. But inside the towns, if they were skilled at making objects, they could make a small amount of money, so the pull of the town could be another reason why so many deserted medieval villages exist. The final point to consider is the changing land use in the medieval hamlets and areas. Following the medieval period, it became fashionable for members of the aristocracy to create huge and grand country mansions, complete with hundreds of acres of parkland and gardens. Now, what do you think made way for these rich people to create their luxury landscape gardens? Well, probably the medieval villages did. Lords of the manor, even during the medieval period, would participate in a trend where they could happily move one village and destroy their homes in order to build a more substantial house for themselves. Although this sounds rather barbaric and in poor taste, forcing people out of their homes to build a bigger one, the peasants really couldn't do much about this, for they pretty much worked for the lord. What he said went, and there was little you could do about it. Landowners would also try to invest and take advantage of new markets too. For example, some tried to take advantage of the profitable wool trade that existed in England, and by doing this they brought sheep. Instead of planting fields with food and vegetables, these fields would be left for sheep pastures, and therefore peasants were left with no work, as they weren't needed to farm the land.
Because you need like way less people to
farm than you do to...
Well, no, you need way less people to take care of sheep than you do to farm.
Right.
So overall, there are a number of different reasons why medieval villages were abandoned by their inhabitants. Be it the Black Death, a change in the landscape, or the way in which the land was used. One thing is certain, that the settlements were left, but still today, much of their earthworks remain. Interestingly, the footage you've seen in this video is from Gainsthorpe Medieval Village. We'll look at this in detail in a separate video, but it's believed that this village was abandoned in order to become a sheep pasture. However, more interestingly, it was allegedly a den where Tudor robbers would hide out, but that's for another video.
So it was a little bit different than what I was thinking. It sounds like he breaks up more videos and goes into more detail. So.
Right. But the fact that these things exist is interesting, and I feel like we have things similar around America, but a lot of them are old forts where people set up during war times and stuff like that, especially during the Civil War. But then after the war ended, there was no need for them, and a lot of it dispersed. So we have a lot of ruins, but they're usually preserved in a way because they could become a historical landmark.
Well, I was going to say, well, a historical landmark, they have...
Well, they have a lot of those too, but I'm just saying for us.
No, it's not the same for sure, but I was going to say we do have ghost towns.
That is true.
And like I say, we do have some towns that like a big boom like California, the gold rush. Everyone moves to a location, the resource dries up, they move out. And that's probably all over the world though, so that's not just the US.
Well, this video kind of makes me want to go down to the town that we live right next to because it is super small, but at one time it was a booming town because it was right off a railroad, so it was like a main point of trade and stuff like that. And I think at one point it was like a few thousand, and now there's literally maybe 50 people living there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. I just was like, there's nothing
I kind of want to look into the history a bit more, but that might make an interesting video. So comment down below if you guys want to see our local town and how small it really is, and maybe compare it to some of your guys' small towns, and just see how things changed over history. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting to see like this just looks like a random field with some rolling hills or bumps or whatever you want to call them. You may not guess like just by looking at it that there used to be like a whole civilization that was living there. Anyway guys, let us know what you thought down below, and I'm assuming most of you guys watching this knew this, but if you did, also comment. Thank you so much for watching. It's good to be back. Catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.